Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll call to order the Port Hueneme Water Agency regular meeting for April 20th, 2020. And we'll start with a roll call, please.
Member Hernandez? Oh, Laura, you're muted.
Here.
Member Marcus?
Here.
Member Munoz-Schnapp?
Here.
Ex officio member Jacobson?
Here.
Oh, Vice Chair Rollins is absent for the record, and Chair Bouchard.
Present. Okay, I'm not sure the protocol here, but we do have public comment on the agenda, and
No
Does the
public
clerk-
comment's been received today. The deadline was at 3 o'clock, and I did not receive any public comments. Member Marcus? Here. Member Munoz-Schnapp? Here. Ex officio.
I'm actually hearing feedback about what was just recorded. I don't know if that's a problem for everybody.
I heard the same.
Yes.
I think someone must have the video recording on in the
Oh,
background.
it was on my computer. The actual meeting was being broadcasted on my computer. I just turned it off. Sorry
Thank
about that.
you. That's all right. Thanks.
Okay, so having no public comment, we'll move on with the agenda approval for the water agency. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second?
Was there a second?
Yes, Laura seconded.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to do a roll call for this, Christy, or you just want me to call for the question?
We don't need a roll call just for the agenda approval, but we will for the rest of the items that require a vote.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have the consent calendar, which consists of the meeting minutes of the regular meeting from February 18, 2020, and the finance cash disbursement for February 7th, 2020 through March 5th, 2020, and from March 6th, 2020 to April 10th, 2020. Does anybody wish to pull any of those items or discuss them, or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
I'll second.
So I have Director Schnapp and Director Marcus seconding, and all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the first item of business that we have to attend to is the appointment of the Executive Director for the Port Hueneme Water Agency, and this will be presented by the Public Works Director, Don Villafana.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm glad you're all safe and well. This is a resolution to appoint the new City Manager, Brad Connors, as the Executive Director for the Port Hueneme Water Agency. And it's before you, and we need your action on this. And the recommendation, of course, is to appoint Mr. Connors as the Executive Director. Are there any questions?
Move to approve on the appointment as submitted.
I'll second. All those in favor?
But Chair,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Chair
Sorry.
Bouchard, we'll take a roll call vote on this if you don't
Oh.
mind.
Very good.
Sure. Member Munoz-Schnapp?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Jacobson?
I didn't think I voted, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my mistake.
All good, thank you.
Member Marcus?
Yes.
Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Or Chair Bouchard, sorry, sir. It's approved.
Okay, the Thank you very much and welcome aboard, Mr. Connors. We look forward to working with you and the leadership you'll bring to both the agency and the city. So look forward to it. Thank you. The next item of business that we have to attend to is the Brackish Water Reclamation Demonstration Facility Operational Report. And again, this will be presented by our Public Works Director, Don Villafana.
This report is for the months of February and March. And during this time, the plant operated throughout the month of February. The silt densities were below the threshold, which is 3. And our water demand for February was 2.82 million gallons per day, which was more than we had in January, which was 2.56 million gallons per day. Last February, for comparison, the demand was 2.54 million gallons per day. And during the month of February, United Water supplied approximately 91% of our water and Cayugas 9%. For the month of March, the plant was out of operation for approximately 42 hours. And this was for a United Water repair. So during this period, our water demand was met by using Cayugas water exclusively. We used 2.61 million gallons in March, and this was less than what we used in February. Last March, our demand was 3.2 million gallons. So for the month of March, United Water supplied approximately 87% of our water, and Cayugas supplied 13% of our water. And during this time, the plant was, the silt density index was below the threshold of 3. So when we were not offline because of the United repair, we were in operation, the membranes were operating. In addition, I want to assure the board and the public that your water supply is safe, that it's treated, it's chlorinated, and that the water coming out of your tap is perfectly safe to drink. And we've also ensured that your water crews are safe. We have split the crews. We have a field crew exclusively and a water plant operations crew, so that if one group were to fall ill, we have a redundancy. So we've taken plans to ensure that the plant will remain in operation. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Is there any questions from members of the board?
I do have a question.
Director Schnapp, I saw your hand first.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Villafana, for the presentation here. Because we noticed that there was a peak and for the usage, right? Just slightly above what's basically average. What do you feel is going to be the use that we have moving forward as we have the, you know, stay at home kind of shelter in place issue going on right now?
I think there'll be less commercial use. So whether that's going to be balanced off by more residential use, I'm not sure. We have not done an analysis of reading just residential usage and to see if it's gone up. We haven't had any reason to do that, but we're still well below what our allocation is. So we're not in any danger of surpassing our allocation.
It might be something that we start tracking, just kind of a footnote about things, so that we could then be aware of when we do start to approach then that allocation limit. Just a thought. Thank you.
I'll see what we can do for records and see how we can look at what our meter reading and track that. Any other questions?
Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the operational report?
Move to approve the operational report is submitted.
Second.
Do you want a roll call on this, clerk, or?
Chair, it's just a receive and file. If you just
Okay.
do unanimous vote, that's okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item is a contract extension for auditing services, and the finance director, Mr. McDonald, will be presenting this item for the board's consideration.
Good evening or afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? We have in front of you the second extension, which would continue this audit contract we have with Brown Armstrong through years 7, 8, and 9. And I'm thinking they agreed to keep the same cost held consistent and flat. We'll probably want to do an RFP to search out, make sure we're in current cost when we're probably in year 8 of this contract. But I think it would be a lot easier, especially now with everything going on the way it is, to give another extension. They've offered us a 3-year extension, and it's not untypical, but usually I've seen between the 5 and 10-year mark is when you start looking for another auditor just to get another opinion. We've had clean opinions, so there's no need to worry about any concerns, but that's usually what you do, is about every 10 years, you look out to see that you're getting the current cost. I have any questions if anybody has any.
Do any members of the board have questions? I see Director Schnapp has a question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McDonald. So if this contract would take us basically through year 12, if we have a 3-year contract, 1 year's each. And so you're saying that at year 10, usually we go out and do a bid. When would you recommend we go out and solicit RFPs?
No, this extension is going to represent year 7, 8, and 9, which year 7 would be this June.
Okay.
So I'm saying probably in about a year to a year and a half. So you basically will give yourself 12 to 18 months before the expiration to do an RFP and then evaluate it at that time. So at the completion of this, it'll be 9 years of audits that they will have completed for us.
When they complete the 21-22 audit?
That's correct. Yeah, the current year we're in is 1920. That'll be the first year of the 3-year extension. And then year 2 is 2021 and year 3 is 21-22.
So we basically begin in year 2 to go out and do an RFP?
Probably somewhere between when they're starting the year 2 audit to after when they're working on it. Usually it's probably a good time to go out for bid when audit firms are at a slow time, which usually be like November, December, sometimes early January, February, because their tax season hasn't started yet too. So a lot of times you can get more respondents if you set your RFP out at those key slow periods in an audit firm's busy schedule.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the board have questions? Mr. McDonald, I just have one quick question. Probably could have looked at this and answered it easily. Is this the same firm that does the city's auditing services?
No, it's a completely different firm. When we do an RFP just for efficiency purposes, I'll probably combine them, but they'll have to give separate proposals because you as the board approved the PHWA one and the city as a separate board approves that one. I've seen it where a lot of times one firm will offer to both and give you a better price, but I think what they found in the past is they got better pricing from doing separate firms. And I think by them continuing that pricing, I think we'll see a small increase when we go out to bid. So I think their price is well at market or below.
I'm comfortable moving ahead to one question I would add. Does the city struggle? I know Armstrong's been doing it for quite a while with the timeliness because all of our independent audits for either the beach district, the city, those audits are dependent on the completion of the PHWA audit. Has that been an issue, or have they?
It does present a little delay, like you said, but a lot of times some of these issues can be completed even before, like we completed the PHWA one, I think about a month or two before we had completed the cities. But by that time, we're pretty much in a firm draft situation, so it won't really change the numbers for either. But there is that possibility of, the beach district or us are behind on it. They won't issue their report until they can get some final numbers.
Yeah, I just wanted, I guess if we're going to extend the contract, if there's any opportunity just to talk to them from just a perspective of getting the PHWA audit completed as early as possible so that both the city and the beach district's business can move forward. I know that in the past, it's been fairly commonplace that we were waiting on the resolution or the final of the PHWA audit in order to complete the beach district audit. And so just a comment for it doesn't change the fact that I support your recommendation. Just maybe
yeah,
throw
if
that out there.
Brown Armstrong was a reason for any delay with them, I would say that's a real pertinent point. I think any delays in getting the completed final stuff is either waiting on accrual invoices to come in after the period, or even just our own staff getting it all caught up, because that one is an actual cost that we have to look at everything through June 30th to divide it out and make sure that's firm before we can go forward with anything else.
Okay, if
And I'm
there's,
anticipating we'll start moving faster on that because we're getting, we just got hired a deputy finance director. It'll be 2 weeks today. And so we're starting to get staffed up so we can try and move some of these things faster. I wouldn't want to put an unreasonable expectation that it'll happen next year, but I'm thinking within the next year or two, I'd like to start seeing these presented or ready to present by December. And, at best, when your best case scenario, it's November, October. It makes it a little harder for us because the PHWA is pretty complex and that has to be closed out before we can do the city's enterprise fund, which is a major portion.
right. Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you very much for your response and explanation. Any other board members have questions? Is there a motion to accept or a motion to approve the 3-year extension?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Second.
that.
It was a tie.
All right. Chair Bouchard, you ready for a roll call? Oh. Okay. Member Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Member Marcus,
Aye.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Chair Bouchard,
Yes.
and Member Rollins is absent for the record. Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to the final item of business that we have. This will be the Port Hueneme Water Agency audit for fiscal years 2017 and 18 and fiscal year 2018-19. And again, this will be presented by the Finance Director, Mr. McDonald. The floor is yours.
Hi, this one is just to accept the final audit report. They combine that, and I was just looking to see, usually it's because of a restatement item that they put the prior year on there, or they may even do that as a regular practice, restating the prior year. There's nothing significant or special to note in there. It was what they call a clean audit. There was no qualified opinion on there. And any questions there, I'd be willing to try and answer and help out anybody that they have.
Are there questions from members of the board?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, Director Schnapp, and then we'll go to Director Hernandez.
All right, so thank you, Mr. McDonald. I have a couple of questions throughout the report. So page 3 of the analysis, there was a change in other assets of $358,000. Can you explain what that is?
That one may take me a minute to review. It'll be, now those assets went up by that amount, so that probably, his current and long-term assets increased by 358,000. It could have been some repairs that they did that were capitalized items.
I see.
I'd have
Okay.
to dig in a little deeper.
I
Okay,
think that was
that makes
related
sense.
to the membrane replacements that we did, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't see kind of a qualifying item, so I just wanted to make sure because it's a significant investment there. And then I also have a question on, let's see. Oh, on page 5, 2018 versus 2017, the total net position down at the bottom shows that we have a net decrease of 531,882.
Yeah, and
And
that one is probably easier described as the probably the decrease in the net assets that are from depreciation.
okay,
Because as when they say capital assets net, it's net of any depreciation. So every year you're going to have a depreciation expense. I'd really want it to get exactly into that. If you go into the earnings statement, it'll usually list the depreciation amount that's in there, and that should represent 50% or more of that 581 in the net capital, and then the 575 negative in the other assets.
okay. And then I have a question starting on page 8. The title of that page up at the top says Port Hueneme Water Agency Statements of Net Position. And this is June 30th, 2019 and 2018. And so what we have are long-term assets due from members and customers. Both years, it shows that we have over $500,000 that I guess we're expecting. Is that an accounts receivable line that we have, and what does that represent?
That one's going to be interesting. I don't know off the top of my head what that is. Long-term asset is going to be something with, my guess is
If I might take a stab at it, Mr. McDonald, I did read it pretty clearly, and I've been involved for quite a while here and have read a lot of these. That directly relates to the city's funding of the naval bases portion of the capital asset. And so while it's really an accounts receivable on the city side, it's just a process of how it works. The Navy base, I believe, the federal government pays the city on an annual, I think one time a year for that, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that piece, but that's where that long-term net, that relates to that. The city funded it, the Navy pays the city, but the city puts the money up to the PHWA.
Okay, that makes sense because that same number is the one that is listed on page 16, due from members and customers, and it said the NBVC PM is the only participant with a balance due for development costs, and it looks as though those numbers match up. So that's kind of like how we take care of it on the accounting side.
Correct.
To make sure that that number is paid, but we have to register it somehow. And there's two numbers, one's for 1 year and one's for the other. Okay, all right.
Yeah, excellent description, Jared. I appreciate that help. That makes complete sense because it's listed as an asset to the whole agency.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really is where the city fronts the money and NBVC just pays the city then for that. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's all through PHWA as well. This is Nathan Jacobson, just to let you know. So I think it should be processing. So if there is some missing funds, just please contact me, and I can get you in front of the right people.
Okay, all right, great. And then
I don't think it's any missing. I think it's future billings that would come out that you know, that I think it relates to the Navy's not paying in advance for those improvements, but they're going to pay for them in future years. And so that's why the agency has to kind of put it as a receivable type asset, but it's not a real billing receivable. So that's why it's not specifically listed like that.
Yeah.
If you could hold just one sec, Director Schnapp. Just for the record, I wanted to recognize that Director Rollins has joined the meeting.
Hello.
And we'll go ahead and go back. You still have more questions, right, Director Schnapp?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
So,
please.
so on page 9, we have revenues listed and there are billing adjustments, but they're negative numbers. It's kind of like contra revenue. 578 in 2019 and 121, those are thousands in 2018. It's significantly higher for 2019, and so I wanted to find out what that difference was, and then what does that line represent?
Yeah, that one, it could be something that we build a water system, and then when you cut off the last period, so like if somebody sends us a bill and it's say July 15th and it'll be half of July and half in June, that could be the billing adjustments as to where they fall in those billing cycles. I'd have to really research that to see if it's anything different, but that's what you typically find is that the water service is the total revenue billed, and then the adjustments could be either billing errors or accrual items that belong in the next year's revenue, not in the current year.
Really a significant difference between one and another, so I was wondering if there was something else that that number represented. If you could
yeah, and sometimes you can see those depending on where the end of the day comes out. It's not too much, and the way you do it is divide that number. You don't necessarily have to put it negative, but out of the total water service revenue, and that'll kind of give you a percentage of it, and then see that it doesn't change too much.
Okay, and then one more question. On page 10, we have cash flow, and maybe this is, yeah, and explains part of what you just said. So under operating loss, there's a line, the very last line before net cash provided. So in 2019, we have a positive number of 456,405. And in 2018, there was a negative 868. I mean, that's a swing of 1.2 million. And so I wanted to find out what that was all about.
You said you're on page 10?
Page 10, the top of the page says statements of cash flows.
Okay.
And
the
it's
cash
in
and cash
category,
equivalent at year end, or?
it's in the category of operating loss. And it's the last line noted in that category. Increase or decrease in accounts payable billing adjustments.
Yeah, that one. Cash flow statements are the most confusing ones to look at because they try and time the revenue that you book as billed revenue that you got paid with when it's actually paid. So I would have to dig in a little deeper on that one before I could get an accurate description.
Okay. I think for me, it was just a trigger of the changes, the difference, that delta, that kind of set it off. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for those questions, Director Schnapp, and the responses, Mr. McDonald. Director Hernandez, you still have some questions?
Yeah, I have one more question regarding the deficit of the 531,882. How are we going to make up for that? What are we going to do with that deficit?
Well, if you're talking about the cash flow statement, it's not really a deficit. It's just a timing of the cash. So you'd have to look at the statement of earnings, not the statement of cash flow.
Well, it seems to have been a result of depreciation, correct?
Probably, let's see,
You
we
read the-
should get that. I'm a couple pages before that on page 9.
Because you see that number throughout the document, and I think if I remember correctly after reading this yesterday, it was a result of depreciation of assets.
Yeah, and really, the theory behind your depreciation is just say a simple thing. It's supposed to last 10 years and it costs you $100, $10 a year. You depreciate it until it's down to 0. It's not costing you that $10, but then theoretically after 10 years, you have that $100 built up in the accumulated depreciation. So your depreciation, it looks like, is 581,000, and the loss is 531 to 532. That represents the kind of the net of those two. So even though you're having a loss, you're not really fully funding your depreciation. So really your gain is the difference between the two, not counting depreciation. Because if we did count for depreciation and we showed like just a 0, no loss, no gain, we would end up accumulating those cash funds because we would be recognizing depreciation expense, but not necessarily paying anybody for it. Does that make sense?
Well, a little bit. The depreciation, though, isn't that, what's the purpose of the depreciation? Isn't that to build up a fund to replace or maintain
It's supposed to
asset?
be a method of matching your long-term capital assets that say you paid, $2 million for a plant that's going to last 10 years. It's basically saying that if it's a straight line depreciation, that really that $2 million plant costs you $200,000 a year. So it's kind of recognizing the cost of running that plant against your current operations, even though it doesn't necessarily reflect that $200,000 going out as an expense. It showed an expense on your statement. And you guys are picking up on real key things that are difficult even for accountants. So,
thank you for the question. Perhaps maybe when we get back to normal life and Mr. McDonald's had an opportunity to look at it, the PHWA is an interesting animal, and when we look at the finances of the PHWA, as we're all used to looking at our city or our specific agency. Part of what you're seeing in those losses, you'll see numbers in that audit that show paybacks. The city's getting $368,000, if my memory serves correctly. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble flipping back and forth from screens. I don't have 2 computer screens here to see it. The Beach District's getting back some 70,000. Those are all part of the true ups and contracts that are related to our individual agencies' relationship to the PHWA. So when we start, I think it would be an interesting conversation for us all just to kind of understand how the financial mechanism and the animal of PHWA works versus our agency, when we look at our agencies and the health of it, if that makes some sense. The city in your audit will reflect your share of the depreciated asset in the PHWA. The Beach District will show it in there. So it's an interesting animal to deal with, and I think out of all due respect for Mr. McDonald, he's done a great job in answering the questions, but I think it would be a good lesson for us all just to revisit it and how that works.
yeah, thank you, Jared. It's definitely one of the more complex organizations I've ever had to deal with as an accountant. And I've always prided myself on being able to take any financial statement, kind of look through and dissect it. And some of this stuff I kind of know, but some of it takes a lot of digging. It's not your standard city or special district statement.
Right. So are there any other questions from board members or comments?
No.
Okay, can we get a motion to accept the 18-19 audit?
Motion to accept the audit as presented.
Second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Member Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rollins,
Yes.
Member Marcus,
Aye.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
and Chair Bouchard.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now we're moving on to the board members' reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. So we'll start with Director Schnapp. I'm just going to go by where you all are tiled on my screen. No
Okay,
particular order.
no problem. Thank you, Chair Bouchard. I do want to have us take a look at where we stand in terms of the leases with the city of Oxnard. I don't think we have visited that topic in, maybe 6 months or so. And noting the last page on the audit said something about it, it kind of triggers the fact that we probably need an update as to where we stand. So that's what I would recommend for a future agenda item.
I think I would support that as well, Director Schnapp. So if we can find out from, I'm not sure if it's going to be Mr. Connors or Mr. Villafana, but that subject matter we've been meeting under closed session is real property negotiation, and whether or not maybe on our next agenda we can, if there's anything that's covered under that, we can meet under closed session and discuss it as well.
And then I do have two other things. One is that we had started somehow like a strategic plan and maybe incorporating it with what the city was doing with regards to our water. And I don't know where we actually stand with that. I know that was under Rod Butler, and certainly, we have had these transitions. So I don't know if that would be something that Mr. Villafana or Mr. Connors could actually help identify for us. So bringing that back. And then just one other comment here is that just FYI, the city is actually going back to billing water customers on a monthly bill versus an every 2-month bill. So just an FYI for you as members. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Jacobson, do you have any comments, or ex officio member? Sorry.
All good. Thank you, Jared. Nothing too much. I think at some point we're going to want to talk a little bit about future plans. It kind of goes into the city of Oxnard discussions as well of future plans for the water plant and those future O&M, major O&M requirements that were brought up in the engineering report that was provided to the board. I think some of those things aren't programmed, and I'm not sure if we want to program them or not, but that's probably for discussion at our staff meetings, and then potentially as a future board item as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Director Hernandez.
No comments. Thank you.
Director Rollins.
Yes, I want to please forgive me. Somehow when I went to try to do this Zoom, they asked for a whole new password. So I had to put in a whole new password. And by the time I had to figure out what my old one was. So, but one question I had, and maybe it was brought up earlier in the meeting in the operational report, has this COVID pandemic reduced or increased the amount of water the citizens are using, or did we get a report on that?
We did. Mr. Villafana and Director Schnapp asked that very specific question, and we did see a minor increase during it. And there was a request from Director Schnapp to see what kind of data the city had so that we could track that independently. So more to come on that, I guess, would be the answer from the earlier discussion, Director Rollins.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Director Marcus.
Well, since we're entering this brave new world, I'm wondering if we could have updates with regard to changes that we as a agency will have to deal with. Just kind of an update, perhaps each meeting, as to where we are, both as the city and the district and the community. Thank you.
Okay, that's I don't have any comments. I thank you guys all for being on here, and I think we're working our way through it. A big compliment to the city staff for getting this coordinated, and things seem to go very, very smoothly. So thank you guys. And with that, I think we're ready to adjourn unless any members of the staff have something they want to leave the board with before we adjourn.
Well, I'd just like to wish everybody good luck. Thank you.
All right, well, the meeting is adjourned at 4:55 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.